Again, you don't have to be really paranoid. So maybe I'm coming off as being very paranoid. You don't have to be really paranoid all the time. It depends on the kind of data that you have. If the data is sensitive, be paranoid about it. If it's not sensitive, you don't have to be. Similarly, the accounts that you have and so on, if it is something very, very crucial, then you be paranoid about it. Then there is this final thing. Even if I take care of files, there is some information that leaks from files inadvertently. Right? So I could do file tracking based on that. So a simple scenario, let's say I have a file and it's a document, I'm writing my thesis or my Btech project or a tech project. It's never that I'm going to do it in one session, right? So unless you're the student who always ventures to the 11th hour and finishes everything in one go. We have multiple edits of the documents. Any reasonable size document will have multiple edits. So this is something that you can do with Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office lets you exchange files. Right? So I can create a file, send it to Balachandran and ask him to make changes to the file. And we keep sending information back and forth. He makes changes to it, I make change to it and so on. The final document that I have is the thing that I'm going to distribute. Let's say this is what I have. But Microsoft Office has this nice feature called tracking changes. Let's say I make some changes and he makes some changes. I may not know what changes he made. I may be looking at a 100-page, 1000-page document. So Microsoft Office has this little thing that track changes. It will tell you what changes were made. Have you used this feature? I'll show you some of these things. So these tracks may be there, but you can also hide this tracking. The tracking may actually be happening, but you don't know it's tracking. So thereby all the edits to the documents that are there, it may have these tracks. So I'll show you some of these things as demo also later. So let's say I get tracking changes on, and I finish the document, I'm happy with the document that I have, I send it out to you. It may have some sensitive information that I didn't want to send. So let's say I'm creating budget, right? And I want to give different songs to different industries and so on. But I keep revising that. The final document gets sent out, but the thought process that went on into making the budget is still buried in the document. Right? If somebody gets information on that, that's bad. Right? So these things could be a problem. In general, printed documents have ultimate security. So we move to the electronic age assuming that everything is nice and good. But printed documents have this extreme security that what you see is what you get. All the previous edits that ended is not there. Right? So it's good in that way. That's why many government officers still hold on to paper trail. Right? You go and get your license. They'll ask you to fill up a two-sided thing. You go to the railway system. They ask you to fill up something. Right? So there is a paper trail that you leave there. And this paper trail, yes, you can still forge the documents and so on. But it's not as easy as what you do in electronic media. But it's not even perceptible sometimes. May not even be known sometimes that something is altered. Or the leak that is happening may not be, you don't have any leaks on the printed documents. Yes, of course, printed documents also have leaks sometimes. So let's say I write something on a paper, it makes an impression on the sheet below. There is some leak there. Right? So if you're careful, you will not want that also. So I'll give you a small example of a spreadsheet leak that happened in Westpac Bank in Australia in 2005. So they put a spreadsheet online which had all these dividends and so on, showed for the next quarter. And they had information about all the projections that they were making and what kind of dividends they initially wanted to give and what they ended up giving. All these calculations were in the spreadsheet. They didn't know about it. And some customer who downloaded the spreadsheet saw that these changes were there, and thereby the bank went into a suit. Because they were looking at different kinds of dividends and then change the dividends and so on. Worse than anything, right? At least it's something that makes them lose their face. If not anything. Even if it's not sensitive information, it makes them lose their face. Another one is actually more interesting, and in this case actually there was a life which was lost. So this is actually a Pentagon secret. They had a document in which there was a double agent, Italian and American double agent, whose information was leaked through a PDF document. And his name was mentioned. They assumed that they had made a mark on the document, the PDF file, blacking it out. But the document still had the name, so this person was actually tracked down and killed. So based on information that you're leaking, you may not know that you're leaking the information because you don't know what you're doing. You assume that this is safe and thereby it should be okay. But you may not know whether something like this is happening or not. What kind of files are vulnerable? Pretty much all the kinds of files that we're interested in practically. Right? MS Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of them have these features. PDF files have features and so on. So practically almost everything that you're interested in will have this vulnerability. What do you do about it? Generally you should, so this is just, so it may not again make sense from a student perspective. But imagine I'm in a government office. All these little things matter. So if you go to a bank, there are these different clerks who will do the data entry. But there is a manager who will do the few key things. Right? So the manager may actually trust all the employees around. But the manager still is responsible for a lot of things. So you would not want the manager to leave the computer unlocked, for example, or manage his computer to have an easy password so that an employee can come and use the password and get access to things that they should not be getting access to. So this is another thing that happened in India a while ago. HSBC had a bit of a problem a few years ago. So there was an employee of HSBC who had access to lots of information about bank accounts, and this employee was siphoning amounts from various accounts into the employee's account. And this came to picture after a while. People didn't know it for a long time, and when this thing was exposed, this person was already a very rich person. Right? So we trust data, right? Lots of our data with various kinds of people, right? Even the cell phone companies and so on, right? We give so much information there, right? So how do you guarantee the security of this piece of data? Right? You write it on a piece of paper and they put it online, right? There's some, it's stored somewhere. You're trusting two things: the paper that you wrote with your father's details, your mother's details, your date of birth, all the different information that you give. That paper, how do you know that it's safely destroyed? Right? You would never know. You would never know if it's safely destroyed or not. Second, even the electronic data that is stored. So when you call, the person at the other end has access to this kind of data, right? So different kinds of call center employees, they get access to different kinds of data, different levels of security. But they do have access to what is your last name, what is your date of birth. They ask you these questions, they verify it against the system. What will prevent them from actually using this data? Right? So generally, what you need to do is understand the level of threat within your organization. For that, you need to know which is sensitive data, which is not sensitive. Don't have one broad brush for everything. Right? So you probably want something which has no security at all for some simple things, but a little more security for some sensitive data, more security for more sensitive data, and so on. Once in a while, you should also conduct risk assessments. So risk assessments would mean that you go on, so just like what we do with watchmen in campuses and so on, right? So we go and check, oh, is this kind of a compound wall enough? If the compound wall is not enough, you go and raise a compound wall. You go and say, oh, this is a huge campus, one watchman is not enough. I see that there are more people coming in from this back door, I need to prevent that, I need to put one watchman there. So this is a risk assessment, and it has to be a continuous process, because when you design a system, you may not know how much risk you have on the system, but as and when you use it, you see that there are more and more risks possible. You have to keep assessing your risk regularly. So this is called risk audit. You have to do that frequently. And once you have that, you need to create risk mitigation policies. If there is a risk, how to mitigate it. And finally, if there is a breach, what is the protocol that you should use to address the breach? Right? If there is a breach in data, if you figure out that there is a breach in data, what protocol? Who should be informed? What sequence of things should happen? Should I really shut off the computer immediately if I see that a hacker is hacking on my system? Or I let the hacker hack onto my system, track what is happening? Right? So for financial institutions, any extra data that is lost is bad, even if they don't catch a criminal. Right? Any extra information that they lose is actually going to be terrible for them. They will probably try and put a stop right there when they see that there is some risky activity that's going on. But for someone else, let's say my office computer is hacked, I don't have too much sensitive data on it. I would probably sit down and watch what kind of files are transferred, where it's happening, and so on. And at the same time, snoop around and try and get some information on the attacker. Right? I'll let the attack continue, but I'll sit down and watch what kind of attack is happening and see how the attack is engineered, where is it engineered from, and so on. So this is again, so once you put risk mitigation policies in place, once a breach is there, how do you actually take control over the breach? What do you do with the breach? So this is also something that is important. So we'll take a quick break now and we'll start back in another 5 or 10 minutes, I guess. Are there any questions? So again, many of these things I said, maybe a bit of common sense, right? But sometimes common sense is exactly the thing that we should not apply, right? We should be more careful than just applying our common sense, right? Okay. So if there are any questions, you can even ask me during the break. Otherwise, we'll start another 10 minutes.